Hi, my name is Louis Gerber, and I'd like to talk to you today about authority and power and how to use that in leadership. But first, let me talk to you a little bit about myself. I'm a South African living in Mexico. I've been living in Mexico for the past 20 years, and I'm a business consultant for the past 10 years and a personal and professional trainer for the past 15. Excuse me. I specialize in human resource management. How did I come on this path? Well, when I started off, I started with three NGOs, three non-governmental organizations. One of them was called Generation X Millennial, the other one was called Phalanx International, and the other one was called the Federation of Youth Organizations of Nuevo León, Mexico. All in all, we had about 82 different organizations that participated with us. Our focus was leadership training and building the youth up, building people into finding their talents, finding what they would like to do in life, and just, their vocations, and just deal with that. This is where I learned a lot about leadership. I really discovered a lot about leadership because in the NGO world, you don't pay people salaries to obey your orders. People don't have the threat that you can maybe punish them by reducing a certain amount of money from their salary because they're not listening to you or not showing up on time or not being productive enough or whatever. So I really had to learn a lot about how to manage people and how to motivate them behind ideas and not organizational structures. This really revealed to me a lot about leadership, and that is why today I would like to talk to you about authority and power and how to use it in your leadership. Where have we taught this concept before? Well, as you can see, we've worked in many companies that might be known to you. Some of the known ones is called Peñoles. It's actually Grupo Mexico. They're one of the biggest silver mining and copper mining companies and mining companies in the world, and in Mexico they're the biggest. Then I've worked with the Bank of Mexico. I've worked with Heineken. I've worked with Cemex, which is the second or third largest Cemex producer in the world. I've worked with banks. I've worked with governments, local governments. I've worked with GE, and I've taught mostly how to lead your people, how to create the right ambient within your team so that people reach their highest level of potential. All in all, I specialize working with different syndicates in all of Latin America. I work with governmental organizations, and I also work with small and medium-sized companies, consulting them on how to improve their processes, making more profit. And I've worked with, as you can see, a couple of multinationals too. So enough about me. Let's talk about what we came here today for. Authority and power, and how to use that in leadership. Well, during the ages, there's been many things that's happened with the mentality of man. Many things have shifted our paradigms. For example, when we were hunter-gatherers, our economic systems were based on tasks and roles inside a group. Usually, and this is where it becomes very interesting, the leader of the group was the man or woman that could hunt the best and provide the best and put the most food on the table. That person, basically their word was law. Whatever that person wanted, that person got. And for thousands and thousands of years, we as humanity practiced and practiced and practiced leadership and that kind of leadership system in that kind of way. This created a deep, embedded sort of worship or veneration towards authority. Our leaders were close to godlike. Strangely or interestingly enough, the second big shift in humanity's mentality and the way we think and the way we do things was the agrarian revolution. During this time, we increased our accumulation of wealth, our resources became vast, and people really needed rule of law and needed society and needed structure and needed sort of organizational management, and human resource management started there. It's interesting to notice that the two types of religions or religious systems that were practiced during the hunter-gatherer phase was more of a shamanistic, individual, spiritual search, and they were not really rules and regulations in spirituality. But then, interestingly enough, there in Mesopotamia, when they really dominated the land and learned how to cultivate and produce excesses, that is when we first start noticing priesthoods and official religion and organized religion. And I suspect it has to do with upping and increasing the authority and the power and equaling the authority and the power of the leaders, in that case the pharaoh or whoever was in control in that time, to such an extent that people actually didn't want to steal any grain or didn't want to take anything from the granaries, because it would be like stealing from God himself, because you're stealing Pharaoh's food. And this kept on going on for a very long time, sort of the divine right to rule and linking it to, accumulating resources and leadership. And it's again, another level of practicing leadership and equaling it to divinity. Then we went on, and basically based on the divine right to rule, they were created something called feudal states, where there were serfs and nobles and, knights and people like that. And they just followed orders, and some people were fortunate enough to be born in the right circles, and therefore they had the right to rule, and the other people were serfs, and they had to basically dedicate themselves to their masters and their leaders, and they were told what to do and where to do it and how to do it, where to sow the grain. Right now, you're my serf. You work like for me because of this and that reason. Really, God gave me the right to rule. This reduced productivity greatly. This made humanity fall into a very dark time. But then, after a while, in France, there was a revolution that, in theory, is an excellent idea, where common man could also have the divine right, because common man is worth as much or equal at least to the divine people in the divine areas, kings and queens and knights and nobles. They had the divine right to rule, but with this revolution, it actually allowed man to take power over himself and over his future and control himself, really. Self-authority and personal freedoms increased vastly the moment they were representative governments. This obviously had a great effect. The moment there is more freedom in a land, the moment people are more free to do and innovate as they wish, or let their nature manifest in a specific and a very interesting, specialized way, then they can definitely control or increase, rather, productivity and prosperity as a whole. This is what happened, and interestingly enough, leadership has maintained a very, very important position in all of these areas. Because of leadership's power and the paradigm of leadership, leadership has taken root in the mind of people. Well, let me give you another example of people management, or rather, let's go to livestock management first, because there's many strange principles that people tend to observe or tend to see that are similar in the management of livestock. People, for example, a long time ago, when a cow gave birth, obviously started producing milk. And what then happened was, basically the moment the cow was ready and gave birth, they would put it in a small corral, a small space, a very, very limited movement. And they didn't allow the cow to be very free during that time. It basically stayed at the house because it was very valuable for the people, the amount of milk and butter and cheese and food they could create from the cow's milk. And so they didn't want to let it roam that free. The problem with that is that the productivity of the cow was very low. It didn't produce as much as a free-ranging cow. The milk was quite sour also. And the production itself, the time, the period that the cow was producing milk was very short. In some extreme cases, the cows got so frustrated that they would actually hit their heads against whatever beams or whatever like limits they have around them, and some of them would even hemorrhage and basically have a cerebral hemorrhage and kill themselves. So it wasn't a very happy cow at that stage, and the productivity and the product itself was of very bad quality. Somebody had the bright idea to let them roam free again, and this immediately increased the production. The flavor was great. It was sweet. People just loved it. And the freshness was also much longer. Cows were happier. There were no suicides happening. And as you can see, productivity was just at its maximum level. The cows just had a longer lasting freshness. Very similar to this. Back in the days in the feudal state, people had very low productivity. All the earths and all the tenants really didn't produce as much, and they had a hard time making their people be productive. I suspect that when people don't have the freedom to choose what they want to do, or they don't feel free, they feel controlled, they feel limited, their level of productivity immediately decreases, because there is no intrinsic motivation to be more, to do more, to give more. So in the feudal states, the productivity was quite low. The quality was kind of bad. The production was terrible. There was little or no innovation because there was no motivation to innovate, and people died quite young. Then on the next slide, on the next piece, we see here a man called Jack Ma. He is one of the richest people in China. It's a recent thing that China has produced rich people, because it's also a recent thing that they've taken their stranglehold off the complete lack of freedom that an individual had in China. They at least lowered and decreased that in a very slight amount. Jack Ma was a very poor man. He grew up in very poor circumstances. As I understand it, he was an orphan. He didn't really have any formal scholarity. He taught himself English by, hanging out with tourists in certain areas in China where there were many tourists. And today Jack Ma is the owner of a website called Alibaba.com, second only in daily transactions to Walmart. There's only one company that does more daily transactions worldwide than Alibaba, and that is called Walmart. Now think about it. I mean, you go buy bread, milk, cheese, your daily bread basically at Walmart, so there's a great need and a great frequency of interactions and of trade. But Jack Ma, through Alibaba.com, which promotes many, many different type of things, many different services and products and, industrial level and personal level and technology and all these things. Great idea the man had. But they have a daily rate of transactions similar to that of Walmart, making this man one of the richest people in the world. What happened? China reduced or released their stranglehold on personal freedom. And it's amazing how that immediately increases people's productivity. It increases and makes the quality of their work even better, because people can choose to specialize in what they feel or desire to choose and specialize in. There is innovation and growth when there is freedom. And people usually tend to live a lot longer when people feel free. It's just interesting to note that how when we change our system and change our strategies, we can increase our teams, our peoples, our companies, our nations' prosperity levels. So let's get into it, people. How do I use my power as a leader? You always have to start with a clear-cut goal. I'm going to give you a simple family-orientated goal. I'm a father of three. I have three children, two girls that are twins. One of them they're both 6 years old. And I'm trying to teach them that in life there's only two pains: discipline or remorse. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tell them, listen, girls, every time after you play with your toys, I would like for you to put them back. Teaching them through that through discipline, you enhance the experiences through your life. You have less troubles, you have less conflicts, you have less remorse, really. So I'm trying to teach that to them in a practical way. And I've been telling them that after they play, they need to pick up their toys. So what did I do after the first time I told them how to do that? Trying to cultivate, knowing that authority through thousands of years have been sort of venerated, have been placed upon a pedestal in a sense, where people, don't even question authority sometimes. It's a great how, and it's amazing how authority has this high level impact due to many generations of practicing the power of a leader. So when a leader comes and he tells you, hey children, I would like for you guys to pick up your toys right after you play every time, keeping the house clean, because in today's life and in all life, all existence, there's actually only two pains that a human being can experience: discipline or remorse. You have to decide which one you want to partake in. So after my kids pick up the toys, what do? I try to catch them in the act. I try to catch them while they're actually doing what I ask them to do. In this, I do something called strategic flattery. What I do there is basically I focus on the behavior of my children, not necessarily one or the other, exalting one and making one feel better than the other. I focus on that behavior. I make sure it's not about them. I make sure it's about the behavior. I try to do it in the very moment that they're actually doing what I ask them to do, especially at the beginning of this journey of behavioral change and molding. So basically what I do is I tell them exactly what it is they did right. Thank you so much for picking up the toys. Daddy is so proud. Now what is that daddy is so proud? Telling them how I feel. What does that do to them? Well, at a very deep and transgenerational psychological level, you are activating again, that place of power that an authority figure has in the mind of the human psyche. And that is an incredible, powerful thing. So what you can basically do is then afterwards you just tell them, listen, keep on doing this. I'm really proud of you. This really is something that brings me joy. You know, as a father, you can get more emotional about it. As a leader in a company, just try to be as sincere as possible and try to really, really identify those behaviors and tell them in a very sincere and professional way how you feel about the good behavior that you just did. Afterwards, it's very necessary to do some sort of physical contact because we human beings, it sort of seals the deal when we have that physical contact. Since we are also kinesthetic beings, you know, we are visual people. We learn through visual aid. We learn through auditory, information enters through an auditory system. But then that physical tact is also necessary to sort of seal the deal. After the kids have been picking up their toys for quite a while, you basically continue the process and you try to set up a next goal. You know, maybe next time I would like you guys to start, you know, cleaning, dusting up, or, you know, making your beds or whatever. It's important to note that you shouldn't repeat constantly this flattery process. It should be maybe the first 2 or 3 times of the positive event. They did it 3 times correctly and you've been there all 3 of those times and you flattered them all 3 of those times. That's enough now. Don't do it too much because, you know, if you do it too much, it loses weight. It's very important for you to just do it maybe 3, 4 times according to what you see. And maybe the first time the kids didn't pick up all the toys, they might have left some of them. It's very important that if they are going in the right direction, do strategic flattery. Push them even further into that right direction. Tell them, listen, keep on doing this, but you know, we just left 2 or 3 toys on the floor. Let's pick up all the toys next time and try to catch them doing that right the next time. What are we going to do then? Months go by and maybe they fail. Maybe at one stage they're lazy and they weren't disciplined and didn't pick up their toys. What must I do then? Well, we obviously realize that they're losing at that stage. They're not doing what we asked them to do. It's not the desired goal that's happening. So we need to go and quickly revise exactly what we agreed on. We said that we were going to pick up the toys every time after we play. Why? Because in life, there's only discipline or remorse. So then we do need to do a strategic scorning, showing a bit of teeth, you know. Also, it is the teeth of the leader that affects people's behavior. So you focus on that behavior. Make sure you never focus on the person, especially when it's a strategic scorning, because people can activate that flight or fight response mechanism, and then anything you tell them after the scorning just falls on deaf ears. So it's very important for you to focus on the behavior, not the person. Do it in the moment that they fail, the moment they start failing. Don't wait a week, don't wait a day, don't wait any time. Try to do it as fast as you possibly can. Be as specific as possible. Listen, guys, remember we said we're going to pick up the toys. Look at all these toys over here. I mean, this is just not possible, you know. Then you go and you say, you know, this kind of disappoints me. You've been for many months now picking up the toys. What's happened? You know, I don't understand how you guys failed in this, you know. I'm kind of disappointed. And then you must make sure that you lift the people up after you squashed their behavior. Make sure you lift up the person. Make sure the person knows that there's no issue with them. The issue is just with the behavior. Listen, you guys been doing this for 3 months perfectly well. I really believe you can. Nothing wrong with you guys. The problem was this behavior. Afterwards, it's necessary again to do that physical contact, you know, the pat on the back, the shoulder, the hug in the case of the kids, you know, the shake hands in the case of the employee. But it's that physical contact that again seals the deal and makes the person just, you know, feel that double hit, you know, the boss, the authority, the dad, you know, is angry with me. Now remember, we've been practicing the power of authority for thousands of years. It is almost divine when a leader comes and tells you how he feels about what you're doing and then asking you to do more of that. And then again, now as you can see this model, it's quite simple. And just remember, don't always focus on the losing side of this thing. Don't try to catch the people making the mistake. Rather start with positive reinforcement, and then when they do make the mistake, go back, you know, and correct them, put them on the right path. So anyways, guys, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you guys listening to us. This is part of a course focused on how to use your power as a leader. And I would just like to tell you guys a little bit about what we're going to be talking about in this course, and it'll be available for you guys in a link that we'll put below. Basically, what we just saw is the reason why authority has so much power over human behavior and the correct way of using authority to influence people's behavior. What we're going to see in the leadership toolkit is what the Pygmalion effect is. It's basically what our expectation is of our followers, of our people, is exactly what we're going to get. So we would like to talk about the psychological process of the Pygmalion effect and how to use that to your advantage. We'll also be speaking about situational leadership, how, when, where to adapt your leadership style, according to what should you adapt your leadership style. This is probably the best method of leadership that I've come across. People also helping people through undesired moments of change. I mean, life is full of change. Life is constantly full of change, as the philosopher Heraclitus said. You know, the only thing constant in this universe is change. So sometimes undesired change happens, and that is when a leader needs to be able to help guide his people through that time. We're going to be talking about that too during this course. And all in all, just how to become a super manager, how to become a super leader. What points do they focus on? What are the best practice of a super manager? And how to just create that ambient of productivity and prosperity within your teams. Well, once again, guys, here's some of our information if you would like to get in contact with us. Since I'm based in Mexico, our webpage is in Spanish, so it's gerbercapacitacion.com. Our Facebook is also a Facebook page called Gerber Capacitacion. And then we have our web. If you want this presentation or any other information, if you want to be in touch with me, if you want any consultation, if you want a quotation on anything that we do, or maybe a theme list or a topic list that we want, I could send you that directly if you write me to my personal email, which is louis@gerbercapacitacion.com. And our LinkedIn is Gerber Capacitacion. Join us, guys. We're doing a lot of things, and many more things will come. Many more things will follow. Hopefully this has really added value to you, to your daily leadership life. And I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.